Hi everyone, and welcome to this masterclass on the SQE with Barbary. We've got an excellent panel for you today, and we're very lucky to have these speakers to join us to give us their insights into the SQE. So please make sure you make the most out of this session. We're going to be covering a range of topics such as balancing the SQE with study and work commitments, navigating the cost of preparation, managing the volume of information you need to retain, and building a study schedule. Let's pass over to our speakers to get the session started.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Ellie. It's really helpful to see those polls, and great to see that you guys come from a mixture of backgrounds, also what your concerns are, and we'll certainly try to address those. So my name's Emily. I am a senior tutor at Barbary, and I'm joined by Charlotte Hampson and Jo White, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves. Charlotte, if I come to you first, can you just introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Emily. My name is Charlotte Hampson. I'm one of the student sales executives here at Barbary, so often helping new students that are asking questions and finding out about the SQE before they enrol with Barbary.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. And Jo, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jo White. I'm also a senior tutor here at Barbary.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, Jo and I have literally helped hundreds, if not thousands of students sit this exam, on top of which we're both qualified lawyers. I'm a barrister by background, but have then sat SQE as well. So I've actually been through the process in order to qualify as a solicitor as well. So Jo and I are very well placed to deal with all of your questions about how this exam actually works and hopefully allay some of your concerns. Okay, now, most of you are probably here because you're thinking, this looks pretty challenging. And indeed, if you look at the pass rates, that's right. Only about half the candidates get through SQE, but then you would expect it to be. In fact, you might even say that you would want it to be, because this is the route to becoming a solicitor. And it's very important that the route to qualification makes sure that anyone who qualifies, of course, is competent and able to qualify. So what we're going to do today is we are going to talk you through what to expect from the SQE1 exam, which is the first stage that you'll need to go through in order to qualify. And then we'll talk about some common challenges. So we're going to go through those one by one. And then at the end, I'll come to Charlotte, who will be able to talk you through some of the Barbary offerings in a bit more detail. So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll have a really good idea of what to expect if you decide to proceed with this SQE1 journey. So Jo, perhaps a good starting point is if I hand over to you to look at what to expect from this exam. What is SQE1?
No problem at all. Thanks, Emily. SQE1 is a multiple choice based exam. Now, it may be quite daunting if you've never studied for a multiple choice exam before. Completely understandable. Most of you will probably have prepared for essay style exams, and this is obviously a very different format. The way that it is structured is that the questions are fact pattern based. So each question, you will get a little fact pattern, a little scenario, where you have to then think about the relevant black letter law. Your job is to choose the best correct answer from the 5 options that are available. Now, the best correct answer is important. It means that there may be more than one of those 5 options that are legally correct, but one of them will be a better fit for the fact pattern that's in front of you. So it's not just the case that you have 4 that are totally incorrect and 1 that is obviously correct. There's a little more thinking around it. So that's something just to bear in mind. If you're in that mindset, and I don't think anybody would be, that it's a multiple choice exam, how hard can it be? It's a very different style of multiple choice exam. It's a 2-day exam that in total has 360 questions. So on day 1, you will have your FLK1 exam, and that is a session of 90 questions in approximately 2.5 hours. You then have a 60-minute break. And then you have a second session of 90 questions, again in about 2.5 hours. That's day 1 over, FLK1 done. The next day, your second day, which won't be consecutive days necessarily, you will then have FLK2. Again, same format. So 90 questions in about 2.5 hours, a 60-minute break, and then another 90 questions in 2.5 hours, and that is you done. It's a computer-based assessment. They tend to be in Pearson VUE type centres. So if you've done a driving theory test, it's those kind of computers, those kind of session venues. So that's kind of an overview as to how the exam works when you actually get to sit the exam at the end of the process. In FLK1, you've got English legal system, constitutional and EU law, legal services, contract, tort, dispute resolution, and business with tax included. And then you've got ethics and professional conduct that are pervasive throughout the whole assessment. And then in FLK2, you've got land, property, again with some tax, solicitors' accounts, wills with some tax, trusts, criminal law and criminal practice, and again, ethics and professional conduct throughout. So they are the topics that you are going to deal with in terms of preparation and revision in order to prepare for this exam. Okay, so in terms of some common challenges, we have planning your study time, very common problem, especially if you are working, covering the breadth of the content, mastering the technique, staying motivated and consistent, and balancing work and study life. So we're going to go through some of those now for you and give you some hints and tips on how to deal with those. So we're going to start with planning the study time. Okay, so the first common pitfall in terms of planning study time is spending valuable time creating and updating a schedule rather than studying. And I'm smiling because I was very guilty of this. And I had lots of different files in lots of different colours, highlighter pens all over the place. I would be preparing what I was going to do rather than actually doing it. All of this kind of helps convince you that you are studying rather than the fact you are actually studying. You know, that this preparation is kind of false. So a common pitfall is spending too much time doing that rather than actually getting on and doing the actual studying itself. And obviously, most students, especially if you are working as well, are very time poor. And so having a good plan in place is really very important. Procrastination, a very common pitfall as well. So things like watching, studying studying tip videos, things like that as your preparation, trying to plan all of it, all of the things that I kind of mentioned in terms of stationery and files and getting everything in order, anything to actually avoid doing the actual work. Difficulty prioritizing topics is a pitfall as well. So things like doing the easy tasks first and then being too tired at the end of your day to do the more difficult topics, choosing the easy road rather than the difficult road. Then what tends to happen is that you don't get to where you need to be, but then you feel guilty about it, and then that puts you on the back foot for the following day's study. So it's kind of a build-up of disasters in terms of using your time effectively. We want to try and avoid that as much as possible. The other thing at the opposite end of that spectrum, I suppose, is overloading your schedule. So trying to do too much, not factoring in break times, meal times, just downtime, and thinking that every spare hour of the day has to be study time. It's not realistic. It's not possible. I was guilty of that too. I did all of my studying while I worked full time. So I did my A-levels, my law degree and my LPC, all while I had a full-time job. Of burning the candle at both ends for many, many years. And one of the things I was guilty of is overloading that schedule, thinking that because I was working I didn't have time to do nothing. I always had to be studying in the gaps. It just doesn't work. And so factoring in that downtime is really important as well. It is, see it as part of your studying, not an excuse not to study. And that kind of gets away from that guilt that you feel when you're not studying all of the time. So lots of pitfalls that we help students with on a daily basis. Some of those may be familiar to you. You may be nodding your way through some of those that you've been guilty of in the past. Definitely things that we can help you with as you prepare for the SQE exam. So,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Emma.
No, I was just going to ask you, Jo. So, how does Barbary help with all of those pitfalls that you've just outlined? How can Barbary help you get past all of those barriers to study?
Sure. So, one of the biggest things that we can help with is that our personal study plan, or PSP, automatically creates an online schedule for you. It does all the hard work for you, and it essentially says, today, in the hours that you've got, these are the tasks you need to complete, and this is how long it's going to take you. And if you complete those tasks, you're done for the day. The rest of the time is yours. So that is all set up for you. We can adjust the personal study plan so that you can block out days. It might be that you don't want to study every day. You might decide to do all of your study Monday to Friday. You're always going to take the weekends off. It may be that you're not going to work a couple of days in the week because work is so manic and you're too tired, but you're going to study more at the weekends. You can block out the days that you don't want to work, either for the whole course, or if you're just going on holiday for 2 weeks, let's say, you can do that. And then what the PSP does is it recalibrates your study time so that it then tells you, okay, if you want to take every weekend off, and if you're going to have 2 weeks off in the summer, etc., in reality, the rest of the time you're going to have to up the hours per day, and this is what that will look like. And you can play around with that and adjust it to suit your needs. Also, all of the studying is broken down into manageable bite-sized chunks, so roughly 15-minute tasks. There's no kind of hours and hours of lectures that you've got to watch in one go. It's all bite-sized pieces, which keeps your brain fresh and motivated. And also you'll have a progress dashboard, which allows you to identify where your strengths and weaknesses are. So with all of those subjects to cover, there are going to be one or two maybe that are your nemesis subjects. There are going to be ones that you're never going to be friends with. That's not a problem. We can identify those and we can help you understand whether you should try to get better at those subjects or whether there is a limit beyond which you are not going to get past, and you know how to navigate that to still get enough questions right in the real exam. So lots of things that we can do to kind of help you set yourself up for success in this exam.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Jo. Now, my takeaway, if I was coming to SQE for the first time, my takeaway from everything that Jo just said would be that this is an absolutely terrifying exam. 15 modules, all in one assessment, and you have to be ready to answer questions across all of those areas. So I think that is what I want to talk about next. So the breadth of content that you're facing does make this a unique challenge. And unless you've done a US bar entry exam or something similar, you will never have had to study that much content for an assessment before. So I think that's what makes this really different and also perhaps very scary when you start to get ready. So what's really important is that you study effectively for that kind of exam. And again, this is where Barbary can really help you. It's the kind of study that most of us haven't ever done in our lives before, and it requires a different kind of connection with the content. So what Barbary Study Plan does is it exposes you to the same content again and again, but it does so in different formats. So for each module, you'll start off with an overview, then you'll move on to something else, then you'll come back and you'll listen to some lectures on that content. You'll do some MCQs, you'll move off and study something else. Then your study plan will lead you back to that content again and give you reading to do. Then it will give you MCQs, you'll go and do something else and you'll get revision activities. So it's that repetition but with gaps in between, which is called spaced repetition, that will help you remember a lot of the content. And this is the really important bit, without ever having to cram it. So if what Joe was saying to you about late night study, trying to memorize everything and cramming, if that resonates, if that's the way that you've studied so far in your life, be ready for the fact that that's not really going to help you get ready for this exam. That is not going to be the most efficient way to study. What you need is to study in a different way. You need spaced repetition so that you can start to remember the content without ever having memorized it. And Barbary does that by giving you easy online access to all sorts of content in different formats through one platform, through your PSP. So you'll have hard copy books, sure, but you'll also have an online version that you can access digitally. You'll have loads and loads of MCQs online. You'll have lectures online. You'll have interactive learning activities online. All of those specifically fed to you at such a time and in such a way that you will start to remember a lot of the content without ever having memorized. So I'd like to come to just a question in the chat that I saw that Ronak, you posted early on in the session, and you are currently a PGDL student and you're thinking about how you can get ready for SQE whilst also getting ready for the PGDL. So it's great that you're already thinking ahead. First of all, well done. That's fantastic. Doing the exercises for your GDL is good practice for your SQE because, as I'm sure you're aware, all of the content that you're studying for your GDL will be examinable within SQE. So what I would say, Ronak, is focus on the content you're learning, focus on the legal principles, and that will mean that you get even more spaced repetition because you're getting it now, and then you'll come back to it again when you're doing your prep for SQE. The PGDL doesn't cover all of the content of the SQE. It covers about half. So for half of the modules that you come across when you're getting ready for SQE, you will have extra repetition, extra knowledge for that material, but you'll still need to revise it because you'll forget it if you don't. So you need to basically approach it in the same way as if you'd never done it, but take comfort from the fact that those extra repetitions will make the content stick better. Okay, so we've talked about the breadth of content. I'll hand over to you, Joe, to look at exam technique for SQE.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first heading there, practice, is really our most valuable tip. It's not an exciting tip, but it is effective. Remember that you are trying to pass the exam, so learning a good technique to answer the actual questions is the most effective thing that you can do. And the more you practice, the better you get with any skill. And learning to mastering the technique of this exam is a skill in itself. The more questions that you practice, the better you will become at things like relevant versus irrelevant information in the fact pattern, how the answers tend to be structured, because you've only got to select one of them out of the 5 options available. Also, how to stop overthinking and actually select an answer. That's a common problem where you then run out of time to answer all of them. And timing in itself is a skill. You've got a very short period of time. You've got about 1 minute 42 seconds per question, which doesn't sound like a lot. Now, some of them you will only maybe need 10 seconds to answer it. If it's something that's very easy and you know the answer to, you can then bank that time to then spend a little bit longer on some of the others. But again, that kind of timing strategy is something that you need to practice. We've got lots of questions on the PSP. There's over 3,000 questions to practice on. You can practice them more than once. You can reset all of the learning sets and do them over and over again. But we can't stress enough how much the practice is important. You can look on the SRA website for the functionality. You can see some of the sample questions on the SRA website to give you an idea about how they look. But that's definitely our top tip there. As I say, lots of questions. We have mock exams. We have simulated exams. We have exam strategy workshops where you get tutor-led support in terms of exam technique. So lots of ways that we can help you. But when you are going through your personal study plan, practicing those questions is absolutely paramount.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. If you take one thing away, it's practice, practice, practice from today. Okay, next. So how do you stay motivated and consistent whilst getting ready for this exam? I think fundamentally, whenever you're doing something hard, you've got to think about why you're doing it. What is it that you're trying to achieve? So when you're miserable studying tax law on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, you can hold on to that glowing, shining image of you as a solicitor in the distance and remember why it is that you're putting these hours in. So how can you hold on to that big picture? Well, surround yourself with support. Family, friends, share your big picture with them, tell them why you're doing it, and then you can lean on them when it gets difficult. Again, with Barbary, we offer this kind of support to you. You have as many one-on-one sessions with learning coaches as you want. So Joe and I both used to offer learning coach support. You'd be speaking to someone like us, qualified solicitors. We also have a performance coach who's all about performance. They're not a lawyer, but they know about achieving hard goals. So again, you can have as many one-on-ones with them as you choose. And so that you've always got people available to you who understand the challenge that you are facing, how hard it is, the sacrifice it takes, and who can help you stay focused on why it is that you've chosen to go on this journey. So use that support. It's available to you. We also provide legal support. So you can ask as many legal questions as you have from our subject matter expert team, and they will provide you with further explanations. So you never have to figure out why something is the way it is if you don't understand it by yourself. You have that support available. And we offer other kinds of support as well. If you've yet to find your QWE, we have a careers service. They can provide you with support in terms of finding QWE and planning your future. You can have one-on-one sessions with career counsellors as well. Again, totally focused on the legal sector. So very tailored advice that can really address the kind of issues that you're looking at. And we also offer mental health and wellness support on your journey as well. It's not to be underestimated. Whenever you undertake a really big challenge like this, it can take a toll. And it's really important that you focus on your well-being during that journey as well. So Barbary really prioritizes the well-being of their students, and they offer you support with mental health and wellness along the way as well, should you wish to avail yourself of it.
Okay. I think it's really good advice, isn't it, Emily? I think use the resources that are available to you. I think it's an online course, and sometimes you kind of forget the opportunities you've got to actually speak to somebody about anything that you are struggling with. The learning coaches are fantastic at dealing with these kind of issues. And one of the common comments we get from students who maybe haven't made an appointment with a learning coach or the performance coach before is at the end of that first call, they quite often say, why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I reach out sooner? Because it's been so helpful. You've given me more motivation now to get back on track, to get over some of those barriers that maybe I've put in place, whether physically or mentally. There is lots of support with qualified lawyers, our performance coach who's specialised in that area. And a lot of students kind of forget that. You're never on your own on this journey, even though it's an online course. There's lots of support available, as Emily's just outlined.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So if you are thinking of signing up, perhaps make a note. As soon as you begin your course, sign up for an appointment with your learning coach, get your schedule working for you right from the off, so you don't have that nagging regret later on that you wish you'd started off better, but get off immediately on the best foot by utilising the learning coach team.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to some issues, balancing work, study and life. Perhaps the hardest part of all. This is an extra thing to think about while you've got 1,000,001 other things to do as well. But one of the tips that our students find quite helpful, and it's quite a primitive approach, but it really works, is if you write down 1 to 24 on a piece of paper, they're the 24 hours in a day. And you cross off the number of hours that you are going to be asleep. You cross off the number of hours that perhaps you are at work, or you're commuting to work, or you're having your evening meal, or you're doing anything where you know you will not be able to study. You'd be amazed at how many hours are left in the day that you could potentially study. It may be that you need to restructure your day in order to capitalise on that time. So it might be things like you go to bed earlier and you wake up earlier and you do a couple of hours study before you get ready for work. Or it might be you can take a break in the day, and depending on how your life pans out, and study then. It might be you realise that actually there are a couple of hours every day where you're just doom scrolling on your phone, when actually that might be time that you could use elsewhere. It's for a finite period of time, but it might be that if you just restructured your day to accommodate this study, rather than just think, but my day already looks packed, that there isn't any time to do this study, you'll find that there are hours in the day that you just weren't aware of because you're just doing other things that perhaps don't matter as much as preparing for SQE. SQE 1 is 360 hours of preparation time. And often when you kind of get into revision, you end up doing more than that anyway. It's a lot of time. But what you've got to try and do is strike a balance, because otherwise you are risking burnout and ultimately poor performance. As I say, I did all my studying part-time, and I started off working full-time during the week and then studying every weekend, and sometimes studying in the evenings after work as well. So essentially I was working 7 days a week. It wasn't sustainable. And that showed in my results, it showed in my performance, it showed in how grumpy I became, how, ineffective I became at all aspects of my life. And so I had to redirect my focus to give me a couple of days off in a week, which, yes, meant that I had to up my hours on the other days, but that was far more manageable. So it's about finding that structure. Otherwise, you won't get through to the point where you can effectively take this exam. It's not the case that you have to spend every waking hour either studying or working. Downtime is part of it as well. And at Barbary, we can certainly help you look at the way your life is balanced at the moment and give you some hints and tips to try and readjust things. And sometimes it's as simple as having a conversation with a learning coach who might be able to suggest things. And as I say, it could just be a shift in the way that your day is planned that you hadn't thought of before. Why would you? You haven't needed to before, that can make all the difference. So all of those things are really important, but you do have to find that balance, because, there's no point in knowing all of the answers to all of the questions in the exam if you are so exhausted on exam day that you can't focus and you end up pressing the buttons in the wrong order. That's not going to help you. And then all of that studying you did to guarantee you knew all of the answers to any potential question that came up counted for nothing, because you wouldn't have got to where you needed to be. So balancing everything out is really, really important, and definitely something that we can help you with.
So, Joe, just before we move on from that, there's a few questions in the chat that I think would be useful to address at this point. The first couple I'll address, and then I'm going to pose the third one to you. So, Marissa and Alex, you've both outlined your background, UK bar, undergraduate law and business student, and asked, what do I need to do for SQE? I suppose the simple answer is, if you've done any law before, that will help you because you'll have some memory. Like I said before, it's like another spaced repetition that you've got of that legal content. You will still need to go through all of the course, including modules that you've covered before, and cover that content again. Barbary students, we've got lots of data on this now. The non-law and the law graduates, they come out very similarly. And I think the key thing is that you get the exposure to the legal content that you need in the run up to the exam as a part of your preparation. So let's say you've studied contract law before. That's great. You'll have some understanding of that already, but you will still need to do the MCQs on contract law, the lectures on contract law, the reading on contract law to make sure that you understand how it can be examined within SQE. So what should you do in order to get ready? You should do exactly what everyone else doing the course should do. All of the non-law graduates, all of the law graduates, they need to cover all of the content of the course in the order that it comes up. So that's the kind of background to the question I want to ask you, Joe, which is, can someone anonymous has asked, can you have a part-time job or a full-time job whilst prepping for the SQE? Or do you recommend doing SQE full-time? So, Joe, what would you say about combining SQE with work? We know lots of people will be working full-time whilst also studying. How does that work in light of what we've just said about study hours?
Yeah, so I would say that if you are balancing work and maybe other things in your life as well, you absolutely can prepare for SQE. If you work full-time, if you work part-time, what I would suggest is you choose the longest course in terms of preparation. So we can have a 40-week course, a 20-week course, or a 10-week course. If you are working, we would suggest the 40-week course would be better. It gives you a little bit more wriggle room for maybe falling behind or having to take some time off to do other things. Whereas obviously the 20-week is a lot shorter and the 10-week is even shorter than that. So yes, you can do it, but it would be the length of the course that will be the main factor, I think. And then again, that balancing what it is you have to balance within your life, whether that be work and study or other things as well, maybe caring responsibilities, things like that. And that's things that the learning coach can help with. But yeah, we have a lot of students who work full-time, part-time, have other responsibilities. Some have children and have childcare responsibilities as well, elderly parents, those kind of caring responsibilities. There's a whole range of people from various walks of life and have different challenges within their life. All of that can be balanced, but I think learning to recognise how long you need to prepare is a key part of that process.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I've moved on to the next part of the balance explanation, Joe, and I'll answer some of the other questions in the chat whilst you speak.
Yeah, okay. So when we look at the benefits of having that good balance that we've talked about, no doubt it improves your focus and your productivity. And that might sound a little bit counterintuitive when you think, how can taking time off from study make me more productive? Surely the more that I'm doing, the more productive I am. But just because you are sitting in front of your computer, just because you are watching lectures, doesn't mean you're taking it in, doesn't mean that you're actually retaining any of the information if you're too tired. Sometimes walking away and having a break is the best thing that you can do to improve that focus and productivity. Undoubtedly as well, it gives you better mental health. As Emily said, we've got a mental health team who can help you if you are struggling in any way in that area. But you have better mental health. You have also sustainable motivation. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's a stepping stone to your future career. So learning the techniques of passing the exam, learning how to answer the questions is all part of keeping you motivated. If you go too hard, too fast, then you're more likely to crash and burn. And all of that kind of then leads to higher exam success. So, there is method in the madness of taking breaks, not studying every hour that's available. All of it gives you a much rounded performance ready for the exam. Things that we deal with on a daily basis as learning coaches. They're the benefits of a good balance and why it's really important that you do kind of take time to plan, to strategize, to work out what realistically you can do every day when you need to take those breaks. All of those benefits will help you, give you a better chance of passing this exam.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Right. So we've outlined some of the key challenges from SQE. And so now we're moving on to our 5 top tips for you to succeed in the assessment. First top tip, set boundaries and define study slots. Okay, so I was just typing to some of you in the chat about this. If you're thinking about sitting in July, that is still very much achievable, depending on how much time you have. So it's very much a question of looking at your own life and thinking, okay, in a typical week, when can I study? Create those boundaries, create study slots, and then stick to that plan. The Barbary schedule is great because it tells you how many hours you need to do each day. We have 400 hours roughly on the course, just under. So if you are doing it over 40 weeks, that means 10 hours per week. If you're doing it over 10 weeks, that means 40 hours a week. It's a very different program depending on whether you're studying full-time, i.e. the 10-week course, or part-time, which is probably what you're going to want to do if you're working full-time and you have small children. So it's all about what your life looks like in terms of which assessment you could realistically get ready for. But if you're thinking you want to sit in July, that's definitely feasible. Our 10-week course has not yet started. However, it is dependent upon you being able to say, yes, I can commit to study full time for that duration. And if you're thinking, well, actually, I've got so much other stuff on, then you will be in all likelihood better off taking a longer view and maybe signing up to a 40-week course, getting ready perhaps for January 27. Okay, so set boundaries and define study slots. Joe, what would you say about creating study sprints?
Yeah, absolutely. This can be a very productive thing to do as well. And I kind of guess it depends on whether you are a morning person or an evening person. For me, it would absolutely be in the mornings. I would rather get up at 4 a.m. than stay up till midnight. So it really just depends on how you work best. But take some time to think about how you would work best. Maybe you've not thought about whether you are a morning person or an evening person. And maybe that's something that you can think about now. But if you can hone in on those focus times, wherever they may be in the day, then you have bursts of productivity that will take you through other areas of the day where you are less productive or you just don't have time to study. So it's worth recognising them, thinking about them, and then making sure that you kind of prioritise those periods, however that manifests itself in your own particular schedule.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Okay, next top tip, prioritize well-being. Well, we've talked about this. If you're on a 40-week course, you start in April and you're not sitting the exam until January 27, that's a very, very long time to say, I'm never going to have a weekend off. I'm not going to go on holiday. I'm not going to see my friends. But even if you're on a 10-week course, it goes from April, May time until July. It's incredibly long not to give yourself any time to relax. And high stress, high tensity does not correlate to good focus. So it's very important, even if you're studying full time, that you prioritize your well-being, that you build in time for you to be doing things other than study and also other than work and care and other responsibilities, but time just for you. So for example, for me, I like to go for a run. So if I don't go for a run, I know that I'm anxious. I know that I'm crabby. I know that I can't focus. I'm not as good at remembering things. It's really important that I build in time for that. So whatever your well-being is, whatever that looks like, you need to make sure that you set aside the time for that as well. Okay, over to you, Joe, for the next top tip.
Yeah, so, and this is a biggie, isn't it? Use technology wisely. We are all addicted to our phones. We all struggle to switch off. Our lives are on our phones and computers, but really important to kind of reschedule things so that you do have that time to switch off, taking away your notifications at night, even just leaving your phone in a different room, making sure that you are not studying, whether it's on a laptop, whether it's on or on your phone, whatever it might be, too close to when you are going to bed and wanting to sleep. And again, it's about recalibrating the way that you are living your life at the moment for whatever the period of time that you will be studying for SQE. kind of just trying to fit it in to an already hectic day. Most of us don't have, endless hours of free time and we don't know what to do with ourselves. So, hey, let's do SQE. It's kind of the other way around. You're trying to cram SQE into an already busy schedule. So that refocusing to use your technology in a better way is really important. And again, something that we can help you with if you are particularly struggling with it. But having that gap between looking at a screen and going to bed is absolutely valuable when you want to wake up refreshed and ready to go again. You'll spend a lot of time looking at screens, doing an online course naturally. So you want to kind of minimize the time you're looking at it outside of those times. Something to definitely think about.
Thank you. Yeah. And finally, then, make sure that you focus your study on your best times of day. So don't do your reading right before you go to bed. Tax is hard enough to get through without having to battle through your sleepiness at the same time. So make sure that you don't try to study through being exhausted, but instead get your rest, prioritize your well-being, and then the study will be easier once you have had that break from study. Okay, that takes us through the key advice relating to our course and how to study for SQE. You can see from those comments on the screen that we've had lots and lots of students now. We've been doing this since SQE started in 2021. Lots of students have used our course, found it really effective, lots of positive endorsements, a few of which are on the screen. Before we hand over to questions, I just want to hand over to Charlotte and give you a chance, Charlotte, just to talk us through the different options in terms of how Barbary can help students achieve their goal.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Emily and Joanne. That's really, really interesting. I think it's really impressive how many different techniques are put in place in order to make sure all of the information goes in, especially the repetitive learning as well. So in terms of how our students can study, obviously we have various different options. One of the really popular options, which I can see on the screen here, is the flexible 40-week SQE1 course. That tends to suit students who are perhaps working part-time or full-time. Maybe they have other commitments in their life that mean that giving more than kind of 10 to 12 hours of studying a week just isn't going to work. I know Emily touched on this earlier as well. It does also give a bit more wiggle room for students that perhaps think, well, actually, I just quite like the thought of having just a bit more time to really let this information go in. So that's the option for 40 weeks, the flexible SQE1 program. We are still enrolling students on that at the moment. It officially begins on the 6th of April, but is currently available for early access. So please do get in touch with us if you want to talk through the options. I think this has already been touched on as well, that this course tends to suit students who are coming perhaps either from a legal background or a non-law graduates as well. This really is the program that we would push non-law graduates towards, but it's also very convenient for law graduates who do have other commitments in their lives as well. That course can be purchased as part of a bundle. So I do often say, and our team do often talk about perhaps the need to know about the SQE complete course bundle. So at Barbary, if you've made that decision already in your mind that qualifying as a solicitor is the only goal for you, it does make a little bit more sense for you to purchase the complete bundle. So that's SQE1 and SQE2 all together. So that the price that's on the screen there and the option that we're showing you here is for the SQE complete flexible. So that would mean 40 weeks for SQE1, and it does go down to 20 weeks for SQE2. Please do note that the hours of study are exactly the same. So we are looking at around 10 to 12 hours of study that you're able to commit a week for both those programs. And Okay, brilliant. So, and the girls have already talked about the only course that's currently still focusing students towards the July exams in 2026 is our accelerated course. Now, that is a very intensive course. We definitely don't recommend that for anyone who's working full time, perhaps even part time as well. It does tend to suit recent law graduates. So it's really quite an intensive course, and we're looking at around 40 hours of study a week. So it doesn't really matter when you commit to that study. The personalized study plan will adjust to your schedule. So it's not dependent on when you can study. It's really more about how much time you can give in a week to that. So the accelerated course is 10 weeks, very intensive. That starts at the end of the month. So that's end of April, the 27th of April. And that's guiding students towards the July exam. We do have another intake in November as well for students that are looking at January.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Charlotte.
And then the focus course as well. Is also available for students who are looking at 20 hours of studying a week.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I've put some QR codes up on the screen. If you're interested in signing up, you can either book a call with an expert or you can enroll. And we are offering a 10% discount on the standalone SQE1 and SQE2 prep courses. Right, time for questions. And there are a few which I've earmarked to answer live. First of all, Stephanie, sorry, CNA, I meant constitutional and administrative law. I should have typed that, but I pressed the wrong button. So apologies for that confusion. And Deborah, you were asking, Joe, I'll direct this at you. Do you need to take notes whilst going through the content for revision, or is that not needed with Barbury's PSP?
No, so with the PSP, we don't encourage you to take notes. We encourage you to just do the tasks as they appear on the PSP. The problem with taking notes, especially in the early days of the course, is that you don't know what's more important and less important. So what tends to happen is you just end up rewriting the workbook in your own words. And that isn't a valuable resource when you get to revision. Or you highlight what you think is important. And in the end, you've coloured in the pages. You don't really distinguish between what's relevant and what's not. So we don't encourage it. When you get to revision, if things like flashcards, mind maps, word clouds, that kind of thing will help you kind of cement the information in a summarised kind of way, then absolutely fine. And we can help you towards that when we get there. But not taking notes. The workbook is structured in a way that will help you with the little bits of information that you need when you need them. As Emily talked about, that spaced repetition. So we give you a little bit and then we move on to something else. And then we come back to the first bit and then we move on. And so we build it up. It's not as though we give you everything in one go on, let's say, contract law, and we're never going to come back to contract law. So you may as well make notes now because that's the only opportunity you're going to get. The PSP is far more intelligent and well structured than that. So taking notes is not something that's necessary at all. And it adds to the time as well that you're spending. You want to focus on the online contents.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Stephanie, you're asking if I'm applying for an SQE2 exemption, is that something that Barbary can help with? Stephanie, we wouldn't help you to write your application for an exemption, but Student Services could certainly direct you towards the correct resources and help you figure out whether you're eligible for an exemption. So that is something that you can get support with. And Joe, one more question for you, I think, before we wrap this up. It's a big question. Can you explain about SQE2? So can I ask you just in 1 minute and no more to just summarise what is SQE2?
Absolutely, yes. There's a challenge. So SQE2 is very, very different from SQE1. And the way the SRA look at it is if you are doing SQE2, you have already satisfied the SRA that you know enough law to be in that position. Whether that be whether you did SQE1, whether you did the LPC, you've got to a standard that the SRA are happy with. And so you are then tested on a little bit of that law, not all of it, in 6 skills in SQE2. So you have 2 oral skills, interviewing and advocacy, and you have 4 written skills, which are drafting, writing, case and match analysis, and legal research. And the whole premise of SQE2 is that we are teaching you to get better at those skills using the areas of law that are required, which is not as much as in SQE1. And it's a very practical course. We mark your work, we give you feedback, we give you role play. It's very different from SQE1. Hopefully, in a nutshell, that kind of gives you a flavour for what SQE2 is about.
Well done. Okay. And that concludes our presentation on SQE1 and what to expect. So, Ellie, thank you very much for having us. And I'll hand back to you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. That was a really interesting presentation and gave some great insights. I'm just going to take the opportunity now to launch a quick poll to learn a bit about what today's attendees are most useful. So after today's session, what's one area that you feel most confident about handling next? So I'll give everyone a few seconds to answer that while I just wrap up in a second. Okay, so it looks like we've got a really good range, a really good balance of all of the different key takeaways. So that's fantastic to see and lovely to see what everyone's taken from the session. Before we all head off, I will just give one more reminder that we'll be sending out a link to the recorded session. So please do keep an eye out for that so you can watch back and note down anything you might have missed, or if there's something you want to go over again, any answers, that could be useful too. A survey will also be popping up once the masterclass has ended, so please do fill that in and let us know what you thought of today, what other topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. Hearing from you guys is always really useful, so please do take the time to fill that out. And finally, just one more reminder to check all of our events that are coming up, which I mentioned earlier. Check out Law Careers Net's events page for lots more useful events. And if you found the masterclass really useful, please do feel free to post about it on LinkedIn and tag us. It's great to hear from you. So I'll just wrap up by thanking our panelists again for a really useful session. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.